California has a well-earned reputation for cultural innovation, so it's not altogether inconsistent that way back in 1929 it was the first state to officially designate an insect as a state symbol. Even as long ago as 1929, state flowers and trees were old news. Washington, Delaware, Oklahoma, Maine, Montana, and Nebraska had all selected state flowers even before the turn of the 20th century. State birds were also fairly widespread by 1929. But because of California's progressive thinking, state insects became a reality decades before there were any state dogs. Chesapeake Bay Retriever, Maryland, 1964. State drinks, tomato juice, Ohio, 1965. State vegetables, Chilean frijole, New Mexico, 1965. State shells, Scotch bonnet, North Carolina, 1965. State horses, Appaloosa, Idaho, 1975. Or state sports, jousting, Maryland, 1962. In fact, the California state insect antedates by more than 20 years the state animal, the California grizzly bear. State animals, by the way, are all fur-covered creatures with mammary glands. In the political arena, insects, fish, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and anything extinct don't count as animals. The idea for a state insect in California came from the Lorquin Entomological Society of Los Angeles, whose members sought to have their home state be the first in the entomological field to record a local symbol of its science. They selected 3 butterflies to be placed on a statewide ballot, sent to, quote, every known person really interested in entomology in the state. A whopping 88 ballots were received, revealing a landslide 77-vote victory for Zerina eurydice, the California doghead or flying pansy, over its opponents, the California sister, Heterocroa californica, with 11 votes, and the Lorquin's admiral, Basilarchia lorquini, with no votes. That the Lorquin's admiral received no vote suggests that even the person who nominated the butterfly for the ballot didn't even vote for it. Times have certainly changed with respect to insect politics, regrettably for the worse, since that landmark election. I personally can't see anything named doghead or flying pansy winning any kind of election nowadays. State insects are now no longer chosen by powerful influence groups like the Lorquin Entomological Society of Los Angeles. Rather, they are generally selected by statewide balloting of school children who are, of course, otherwise not allowed to vote on any issue of substance. As I write, there are 27 states with official state insects and 2 states with arthropods as state fossils. Given that there are at least 30,000 species of beetles alone in the United States, it would seem statistically unlikely that any 2 states should end up with the same state insect. It's not at all surprising, for example, that 7 states have chosen milk as their state drink. There are simply not that many substances humans imbibe that can be regarded as wholesome and non-addictive. Yet 12 of the 27 states with official state insects have named the, quote, honeybee, an introduced species, as their state symbol. 13 if you count Utah, which doesn't have a state insect, but which calls itself the beehive state. These states, Arkansas, Georgia, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wisconsin, range geographically and politically all over the map. It's unlikely that voters in these states could agree on any issue other than state insect. 5 more have named the, quote, ladybug as their choice: Delaware, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Ohio, and Tennessee, although Tennessee appears to have named the firefly as its state insect as well. Distributed among the remaining states are the, quote, firefly, Pennsylvania, and the other half of Tennessee, the European praying mantis from Connecticut, the Baltimore checker spot, Maryland, the dragonfly, Michigan, the monarch butterfly, Illinois, and the Oregon swallowtail from Oregon. As far as I can tell, California was unique in having a state insect until 1973, when the forward-thinking people of Maryland designated the most appropriate Baltimore checker spot as state insect. But I would expect nothing less from a people who designated jousting as their state sport. The inspired choice of the people of Maryland stands in stark contrast to the actions of residents of Arkansas, Nebraska, New Jersey, and North Carolina, who within the next 3 years all named the honeybee as the unique and distinctive symbol of their respective states. Unfortunately, the concept of naming an insect to represent the spirit of the state seems to have gotten lost in the political process. The proliferation of beneficial insects, bees, mantids, and ladybugs, among the ranks of state insects demonstrates this point dramatically. By and large, state flowers are not useful, otherwise the soybean and not the violet would be the state flower of Illinois. By and large, state insects are useful. Why is it that only useful insects are, quote, politically correct? Admittedly, it is not only insects that find the political environment hazardous. When New York was preparing to name the beaver their state animal in 1975, a disgruntled legislator in Oregon, which had designated the beaver as its state animal 6 years earlier, suggested that, quote, the cockroach might be a more fitting symbol for the Empire State. And in 1987, Governor Jim Thompson vetoed a bill that would have named the Tully monster, Tullymonstrum gregarium, the state fossil of Illinois because, quote, an election among school children would resemble the Soviet electoral system. The governor was bothered by the proposed election process, according to which school children would receive a ballot to mark either yes or no to the Tully monster, a 300-million-year-old marine animal known only from coal shale deposits in Illinois. The Champaign-Urbana News-Gazette of September 16, 1987, quoted the governor as eloquently and persuasively arguing that, quote, it's either yes or no on the Tully monster. That's un-American. That's how they run elections in Russia. This is not Russia, it's Illinois. Interestingly, the Tully monster finally did win approval as state fossil in December 1989, and Thompson declined to run for re-election 3 years later. It remains to be seen whether Governor Thompson will be nominated for anything in 300 million years. That useful insects are overwhelmingly the choice of most Americans to represent their place of residence is not for want of trying by more entomologically enlightened voters. In the discussion over the Wisconsin state insect in 1985, for example, the mosquito was unsuccessfully pitched as a possible candidate due to its status as an important link in the aquatic food chain. During the long debate over a state insect for New York, legislators were unconvinced by conservationists who argued that an endangered species such as the Karner blue butterfly, Lycides Melissa samuelis, would be a more appropriate symbol of the state's natural resources than the ravening aphid-devouring lady beetles. In 1992, it was a politician who showed some imagination facing down the, quote, bee boosters in the Oklahoma legislature when he proposed, quote, the tick as state insect. Although his taxonomic skills weren't exactly awe-inspiring inasmuch as ticks are arachnids and not insects, his logic was impeccable. State Senator Louis Long, quote, lobbied for the tick because it would have something in common with mistletoe, the official state flower. Both are parasites. This quote from the Chicago Tribune of April 22, 1992. Senator Gilmore Capps, tool of the state beekeepers and proponent of the original bill, prevailed, however, and the honeybee bill was adopted unanimously. That unanimous ballot meant that when the votes were counted, Senator Long didn't even have the backbone to support his own candidate. It's true that insects have never really enjoyed good public relations, but politicians these days are hardly in a position to throw stones. What with influence peddling, pork barreling, sexual harassment, illegal campaign contributions and all, it may well be that the next nominee for state insect will be a spineless politician.